Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Ethical Practices in the Arts. My name is Taiwo, and really excited to be doing these 7 series of workshops with Jemma. When we started this series, we focused on ethics is. We started by exploring what does ethics even mean to us. We do recognize that the idea of ethics as a word, as a term, it may necessarily not be the term that is used within the art practices and art and culture, but we're interested in the fact that at the heart of what we think ethics is the notion of agency, of relationality, of responsibility, of accountability, and working in a way that is ethical, in a way that resonates with our communities. From ethics is, we moved on to ethical questioning, a framework, a series of questions and processes that we've been engaging over the past 4 episodes in this series, looking at what are the questions we need to ask ourselves before a project, during a project, and after the project. We're also really engaging the notion of value. What kind of value system is our practice built on? Is our organization, artistic composition, and ways of working? What kind of value system is it based on? I think at the heart of that, if we can figure out the value upon which our work is based on, relationality, deep listening, engaging with community, and doing things in a way that is supporting, empowering, and also reflecting. And then we were able to ask ourselves some of those questions, and we used the idea of reflexivity, really thinking about social justice, and of course, what it takes to have that collective action, whether we're working as a solo artist or we're working as an ensemble or we're art administrator, in whatever capacity we occupy within the ecosystem. After that, we moved to talk about ethics of justice and ethics of critique. Under ethics of justice, we talked about the fact that there are a lot of legal framework, policies, bylaws upon which we have to respect and work with, whether we're applying for funding or whether we're working in community, looking at the legal frameworks that guide individuals or groups or upon which some organizations also embrace to avoid legal implications, later on in the future. But ethics of critique, on the other hand, kind of take on that and then come to the realization that the reality is that a lot of the things coming from the framework, from the lens of justice, whether policies, whether principles, whether bylaws, rules and regulations, are not necessarily embracing. They are not necessarily inclusive. They have their lacuna. And so the idea of ethics of critique is to bring critique into that space, to critique and really carefully think about the legal ramifications of the implication of the legal framework upon which we're working in. And we cited examples from the university where I work to whether we're working or engaging with, funders or we're on a board, and all of that. We cited those examples as a way to help us, whether we're curating, a festival or a show, whatever we're doing, that these ethical frameworks can guide us to think about this. Today, in this video, I'd like to focus on ethics of care. And what does that really mean? I do understand that the notion and the idea of ethics of care may not be new to us. We may have heard this before. And based on the reading that we've done, that we've asked of you to do, and also the podcast, we're hoping that you can really think about what that means within your own work as you engage in community in your art practice. The major highlight about ethics of care is to understand that, again, it's in response to the reality that our society is built on a very patriarchy system. Our society is built in a way that it does not necessarily recognize the labor that goes into taking care and giving care to someone. Of course, it comes from the stems of work from feminist movement and really challenging the patriarchy society upon which we find ourselves. At the heart of ethics of care is really thinking about responsibility. It's really thinking about the affect, the emotion. It's also thinking about the caregiving and caretaking. It's also about the accountability. That if we want to do things in community, we have to learn the act of deep listening. We have to learn the act of going slow, when to go slow and when to go fast. It's also understanding processes and protocols. It's also understanding that at the heart of what we're doing is building relationship, not in a transactional way, but in an intentional way to relate with, to be in resonance with. That doesn't mean we're not going to disagree to agree. That doesn't mean we all have to align in the terms of epistemology and how we do things and how we think. No, but it's understanding that despite our differences, we can still uphold human dignity. We can still work together to create as an artist in taking care to the materials, whether cultural materials, whether the process of creation, that care is at the heart of that. So the ethics of care offers diverse perspective, and it's also a way to respond to complex moral problems facing not just only our day-to-day, but even as artists. One aspect of its intricacy is that these lens tend to sometimes deal with emotions. Highlighting this complexity, Paul Bagley, an educational ethicist, raised the questions: is the ethics of care an emotional or relational model? Thinking through this is an important question because it becomes clear that aspects of these ethics could be considered rational, such as providing discipline and attention to the kind of work that we do, to the materials that we do, to members in our ensemble, to our community. However, empathy and compassion towards others are also part of this paradigm and tend to demonstrate emotions. So, which means that when we look at our practice from the lens of ethics of care, it means we're connecting in an intentional way the head and the heart. If there's something that art does or tries and attempt to do in a beautiful way, or can do in a beautiful way, is connecting the head and the heart. It's not just about the story we're telling alone. It's about how we're telling that story. It's about the process to making that story to be told. It's about the care we put into every process of making, whether it's beats that we're making, whether it's the grant that we're writing, whether it's a dance that we're creating, whether it's a policy that we're writing, as for those that are on the board, whether it is a play that we're putting on stage, whether it's a play that we're writing, whatever it is and whatever we fall within the ecosystem, putting ethics of care means that we're connecting the head and the heart. It means that we're bringing empathy and compassion. It means that within the context of ethics of care, compassion is a value, empathy is a value. It means that building relationship in a sense of relationality is a value. I'd like to end the short video around ethics of care within that paradigm, asking ourselves that question: in what ways can we add more care to the work that we're doing? In what ways do we need to listen more? In what ways do we need to go slow? In what ways where we need to move fast? And these are the questions that, whether before we start, during the project, after the project, whether we're evaluating, assessing the project and all that, we can think carefully around that. I hope that this video is useful for you. Looking forward to having a great chat at our in-person session on Saturday. Please take the time to listen to the podcast where Parker Johnson, taking us, sharing his experience on the work that he's doing in Victoria, British Columbia, and how he's engaging ethics of care into his work. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday.